Okay, great. So hopefully all of you can see my slide. I will try to leave some time at the end for any questions. There is a question panel on the app. So if you do add a question, I will get that. If I don't, if I run out of time, then we'll be able to come back to you after the webinar and help you with those questions directly. As I said, welcome all, and today it's all about understanding the labour market for graduates. So for some, this may be a question that's answered solely through the prism of graduate outcomes data. And why not? It's excellent to have rich data 15 months out from graduation, and it's been particularly helpful for us to inform the mapping of degree areas to occupational outcomes. Often I'm asked which LMI or labour market insight people should refer to for things relevant to non-vocational, highly academic course areas, because the link isn't always obvious. And by looking at which occupations recruit from the widest variety of degree areas, we get an indicator for the most accessible destinations for those graduates who don't necessarily have particular domain expertise or hard skills that are needed as a prerequisite for some jobs. So it is very, very useful data, and it's great. But the trouble with focusing on GOS alone is that it doesn't give you the full context for what's happening in the labour market and why it might be happening. Plus, there's tremendous lag, because you have to consider it references graduates of courses that started years before they sent in their GOS responses. So to deal with these issues, you need to look to the wider labour market, and there are a number of lenses we can understand it through. However, before I kick off with that, let me briefly introduce who I am, who we are, and what we do, because I know there are some people on the webinar who I don't recognize, so which is great. Let's see if I move my slides. There we go. So I'm Richard Hewitt. I'm Director for Higher Education in the UK for MZ Burning Glass. Some of you may be familiar with MZ. Some of you may be familiar with Burning Glass, and until the summer, we were ostensibly two rival labour market data companies, but now we've merged and we're one big happy family. The reason we've been able to come together so well is because we already shared a mission, which is to help people make better decisions by connecting people, education and employers through labour market data, while being mindful of the different shape and needs of regional economies. So in higher and further education, we support institutions in understanding their economies in terms of jobs, industries and skills, as well as in identifying relevant companies to engage with. But before I get back to the task at hand, I should probably deal with some concepts and terminology before we really get in to the meat of it. So firstly, we're definitely going to be talking about skills. And I know this term doesn't always sit well with some in the world of HE. Whenever MZ Burning Glass refers to skills, we're invariably referring to skills data. In a data context, what's happening is here we're passing millions upon millions of online job postings and CVs from around the world every day. And what we're looking for are terms that reoccur, words that reoccur. We normalize those terms to an open source, dynamic, i.e. it updates, skills library, so that we're able to count these terms in a meaningful way. And one of the other things that we do around this is we create metadata that describes the skills. So on a simple level, is this thing a software skill or is it a language skill? The point though I'm making is that the word skill encompasses any term of value we see being used in the labour market. So in HE parlance, it includes knowledge, competencies, attributes, behaviours, hard, soft, transferable, 21st century skills, and so on. It covers the whole range. We're also going to be talking about occupations, and these are the job families defined by the ONS in the Standard Occupation Classifications Taxonomy, or SOC. Now, we know from GOS that the two key tiers of high-skilled jobs, or as we're now calling them, professional employment, that fresh grads go into are the associate professional and technical occupations, which are SOC 3, and professional occupations, which are SOC 2. So SOC 1 are also technically these professional employment and graduate roles, but they're management and leadership roles. And SOC 4 are considered medium skill or non-professional roles. They're probably not, but that's a whole other, that's a can of worms that I'm not going to go there. So to get to some data that's grounded in occupations, it's the SOC 2 and SOC 3 categories that we're most interested in for our graduates, fresh graduates, going into the labour market, and as such I'm going to be referring to those as graduate jobs or graduate employment. So I hope that's clear. A lot of the reporting we can read about the labour market is industry sector specific or profession specific, and it's typically available at a national level. The problem with this is that industry demand is different in each locality, with its own economic profile driving its own particular need for different skills. Moreover, industries employ multiple occupations, and a particular role can be employed in multiple sectors. So, you know, universities employ marketeers, bookkeepers, security staff. It's not just lecturers. Business sales executives can be employed in the pharmaceutical industry and the car manufacturing sector. And as soon as we aggregate up with the data, we lose the insight that's critical to making it actionable. So if we're only dealing with insights which are at these kind of broad areas, then we're losing things that we can actually do something about. So let's take graduate employment in the definition I used and see how those associate professional and technical and professional occupations are distributed across the country. So if we look at aggregate, in 2020, there were just under 10 million of these jobs across the UK. So that was actually a drop of 1.3% from 2019. And that's pretty remarkable because it's the first drop since the financial crisis period back in 2008, 2009, when there was a 0.2% dip. So that gives us an aggregate view at UK level, but these jobs are not evenly spread across the country. But there are different ways to view this. And just before I head into the next slide, I should add or reiterate here that we are not here just looking at jobs which are employing only fresh graduates. These are the occupations where typical destination occupations for fresh graduates. However, the numbers here are looking at the entirety of the labour market, of the workforce in the labour market that fill those occupations as well. So there could be people with multiple years experience post-graduation who are in those occupations. There could also be people who haven't had a degree who are in those occupations. This is giving you the wider context that you won't get from the graduate outcomes data. So first, let's just take total job counts. And we can see that represented in the first map on the left. Lots of heat maps today. So this is highlighting the hot and cold spots by volume. And for all of these charts, I should also add, I'm showing the data at county or unitary authority level. So there's consistency there. as we look at the distribution. Now, looking at total volume isn't always the most helpful way to understand the distribution of opportunity, because each locality has a different number of inhabitants. So another lens we can use is location quotient, which is here in the second map. And this shows the relative concentration of those jobs. So in that second map, it's clear that there is a more even distribution for these graduate type jobs across the country, but we can still certainly see there are cold spots. The third map we have highlights where new jobs are being created. So that's either through growth or replenishment. So that means replacing people who retire or move to a different occupation. This is an openings metric, and it is a conservative measure because it doesn't include replacing people who are moving between jobs within an occupation. So it really emphasizes where there is new additional opportunity in the market. So these first three maps are using MZ Burning Glass's structural economic data with the job counts derived from the ONS's Business Register and Employment Survey, and it's the 2020 version for that, BRES 2020. The final map, though, uses a different data set. And though it's using the same, though it is using the same county level geographies and the same time period. So this comes from MZ Burning Glass's job postings data, and indeed it's our new and improved job postings data set. And while a job advertisement isn't necessarily representative of one hire, it does indicate recruitment activity, and it would pick up on opportunities where workers are moving within an occupation and need to be replaced. So looking across these maps, we can see that the regions around Oxford, Cambridge and Reading have high prevalence when it comes to graduate employment, as do Birmingham and Leeds. Further north, there's clearly demand around Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen. The upshot of this is that if you're an institution that's in an area where there are fewer graduate type jobs, then it could be a more competitive labour market for your graduates who remain in the region. And to really dig into that further, you need to compare really HESA enrolments and qualifiers data, map those by programme area to labour market destinations. And as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we've done, and we use GOS and the Labour Force Survey to inform it. But you do that to get an understanding of potential oversupply and undersupply of graduate talent in the region. Now, that's probably a whole other webinar, but maybe we can look into that later this year. But what I've done here, though, is look right across graduate occupations in aggregate. I haven't made any link to course areas. So while this can inform me about the overall environment, it doesn't guide provision. To do that, we can approach it in several ways. Firstly, we can take the same approach as we've just been through, but this time narrow it down to one single occupation, so at a 4-digit level in the SOC hierarchy, which is quite a granular level, or a group of occupations that we can associate with a particular course area. So an easy one to use is architecture. And so if I look at our mapping for architecture, as in Jack's code K100, what we can see is that graduates from this subject area typically go on to 5 key relevant occupations. Those are architects, chartered architectural technologists, building and civil engineering technicians, architectural and town planning technicians, and draftspersons. So that will be our group that's informing this, and rather than look at this nationally, I'm comparing 2 regions. I have 2 regions here, the Northwest and the West Midlands. And because I'm looking in a smaller area, I've also gone down to drilled down to a lower level of geographic data, so we've got this at local authority level. But we're looking at the same metrics. We can see similarities across the different lenses, so such as the concentration of opportunity for architecture graduates in Birmingham and Manchester, But we can also see different stories in the data for places like in the Marches Let region. So down Hereford Way, we can see significant openings, and that could potentially be driven by replacements rather than growth in the total number of jobs, for example. But we can see different stories emerging, and we can understand this demand through additional means, though. There's an additional layer of data we can go to. So I'm going to go to skills. So sticking with the architecture theme, one of the key skills that comes up in relation to that subject, and I can see that from our data, is AutoCAD, the computer-aided design and drafting software. And rather than looking at job counts and concentrations, we can pick up specific demand for a skill from employers in their online job postings. So looking over a period of 2 years and using a filter to eliminate very low volumes, we can see where the recruitment activity has been for that skill throughout the pandemic in the first map. We're looking from January 2020 to January 2022. The second map shows what that looks like in terms of rates of change between those two dates. And you can really see there the impact of the pandemic. That's really quite clear. The third map, though, I've used a different time period, and here I'm comparing January 2021 with last month. And at least we can see that there's a better picture. And clearly last month something was happening in charming Breckland and South Norfolk, and I had a little dig down into the data to see what that was, and I happens to be some jobs coming up looking for AutoCAD in Wymondham and Thetford with organisations like the BBC and a company called Xheat. Here, though, we're looking purely at demand for a particular skill that's relevant to a course area. But how well do your courses overall reflect the needs of a sector, or more precisely, a target destination professions? So first, we can build a skills profile for the relevant jobs, identifying the most cited skills in a sample of postings from a recent period. Of course, those professions can be employed across a range of industries. So I'm narrowing my parameters, and so what I've got here are I've got the drafts people and related architectural technicians as a broad destination family of occupations, and I've narrowed the data I'm looking at for major engineering companies like Babcock's, Kia Group, AECOM, and so on. And what I've done is pulled out which skills of any significance in volume terms have are coming through on the left-hand side. So we've got all of those different skills that come through, and I'm focusing, as you will have noticed, on hard skills here. Domain expertise. Remember the broad definition that we have of skills. On the right, I've pulled out which skills of any significance in volume terms have increased or decreased the most since last summer. There are different ways you can run this kind of analysis. You can aggregate time periods and compare those aggregations and so on. You can chart it out very nicely. But the point is, you can identify skills demand in the labour market en masse, looking at groups of skills, and you can also track them. But to really benefit from this type of approach, you need to be auditing your provision in the same language so that you can compare what you deliver with what's happening in the labour market. So that way you can also see what you're delivering that isn't mentioned by employers, and Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not valuable, but it is evidence that should be people should be aware of, and also what employers are asking for that you're not covering, or at least that you're not articulating that you're covering. And maybe your students should be aware that it's useful, that this is something that they have been learning about, and that it has value in the labour market. Now, sales pitch alert, we do have an online tool, SkillSync, that enables you to do that, but you can also automate it. We have an API, a skills API, and the benefits of doing this kind of thing is because our skills library is open source, it means you can then connect it into other solutions. So if you're looking at things like digital badging and micro-credentialing, then you start to be able to build those things up. But also, because this is a machine readable language, you can generate dashboards and all sorts from it. So that's really the way you can track what's happening in the sector, and you can link that to your provision and start combining all of this. So I hope that's given you a sense for some of the different methods that can be used with labour market data to understand the graduate labour market, and how that data can be connected and utilised in your work. We have just released a free report. There's one for each of the devolved nations and for each of the government office regions within England to highlight some of these things. So you can download it here. So our website, mcdata.co.uk or economicmodelling.co.uk/graduate-labour-market-2022. And we'll make sure this comes through to you as a link afterwards, but there you have it. So do go and request your reports. They download automatically, so they should arrive in your inbox. It covers quite a lot of the things that we've looked at today. So things like the total employment numbers, total occupations, the top occupations by volume, looking at things such as top occupations by growth and by those openings, looking as we did with AutoCAD, but in the reports looking at data science, look at skills demand, looking at the job titles that we can see associated with a particular skill, which isn't something I did just now, but is easily doable, and what other skills are associated with a particular skill. And so we kind of looked at that in what we were looking at, although I didn't pin it to a particular skill. I just pinned it to a group of occupations and a group of companies. But in these reports, we've looked at, okay, people with data science, what are the other skills, what are the other skills employers are looking for from those from people when they're recruiting. And then we've also got some indicators of who the employers might be in the region who is recruiting those jobs for that particular skill. And because we love them, some more heat maps as well. So do go and get your reports. There's no limit. You can download all of them if you want to, but hopefully that will be of some interest to you. And of course, if you're interested in exploring more of the data, or to dig down into a smaller region, your local region, then that's what the universities do that use our data, that use our tools, is they have access to all of this on tap. It only takes a few minutes to pull off this data. It doesn't involve months and months of research. It's very, very easy to get hold of all of this. So if this kind of thing is useful, if you think you would be interested in understanding more of what's here, do get in touch, because I'm very happy to take you through your more local data, see what we can find. And of course, if you already work with us and maybe you don't have access to the data, ping me a note and I'll connect you to the right person in your institution to speak to. Are there any questions? I don't think I'm seeing any, but I'll give you a second. Give you a second to type them, but I'm not seeing any questions come through. Any questions? Nope. Okay, well, in that case, I shall bring it to a close at the half-hour point, and I do hope to be in touch with all of you, some of you, at some point going forward. But thanks very much for joining, and I look forward to being in touch, and I hope you find some use for the reports going forward. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.